Donald Trump is president of the United States. His experience was being on The Apprentice. He's head of the Pentagon whose experience was being a weekend anchor on Fox. Are you kidding me? He's got Dr. Oz is in his administration. Dr. Oz,
you're leaving out something.
Me?
He's a 33-year-old socialist who's never run a popsicle stand.
He's literally in city government right now. Sorry, after Donald Trump, I'm sorry, after Donald Trump and his Pinky and the Brain administration, no one ever gets to talk about qualifications.
Socialism.
That's liberal lunatic Joy Reid coming out of forced retirement to push the ridiculous idea that Iran just wants peaceful nuclear energy, as if the world's biggest state sponsor of terrorism is just looking to keep the lights on. Welcome to Nerk News, I'm Nerkish, and it looks like Joy Reid came out of retirement just to prove nothing's changed, because only in establishment media could someone with this track record of ignorance and bias be rewarded with another microphone. You know, she's already defending Iran like they're a misunderstood neighbor with a harmless science fair project. I mean, she hears Midnight Hammer and thinks it's America overreacting, not responding to the world's top terror sponsor. Here she is in her propaganda pantsuit questioning US military strikes on Iran like she's doing PR for the Ayatollah.
I find it rather extraordinary that we are very casually having a conversation about the tactical success or failure of dropping a 3,000-pound bomb or two on a sovereign country that did not attack us. We are failing to unpack or even address, as we're discussing whether or not it was effective how we bombed Iran, whether Donald Trump was correct in saying we obliterated their facilities, and not asking why on earth is the United States bombing a country that did not attack us? What on earth are we doing there at all? And why is it that there is this arrogance in the West and in the United States to say that we get to decide who can have nuclear energy? We get to decide that, and not just decide it, we get to act on it and drop bombs on a country that didn't attack us. We had no business dropping bombs on Iran.
How about democracy? Why are we doing this? Because Israel has a democracy like the United States of America. Joy, the fact that you're backing a country
democracy
that
is not like the
slaughters
United States of America.
That slaughters people for their religious beliefs.
In the United States,
it's crazy that you're
people
like,
who are
Iran.
LGBTQ people can't even serve in the military under the president you prefer.
Okay, but they can live, they get married.
I'm sorry. They're only a little bit. They're only a little bit discriminated against. They're allowed to live, but they're not allowed to serve in the United States military. They're being persecuted. They can't have their stories told in school. The United States is not exactly a beacon of human rights for gay people.
There's a lot of countries around the world that are.
You know, there's Clueless, and then there's Joy Reid suggesting Iran is some sort of green energy nonprofit. I mean, let's not forget that they bankroll Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. These aren't solar panel companies. They're terror groups that have killed Americans. Since 1979, Iran has been linked to over 600 terrorist attacks, and their nuclear program is 22 times over the JCPOA limits, with uranium reaching weapons-grade purity. But Joy seems intent on acting like Midnight Hammer was just big mean America picking on poor little Iran. Here's Reid proving that her ignorance isn't limited to international politics.
What Mamdani said that I thought was really extraordinary, he would be the first immigrant mayor of the preeminent immigrant capital in the United States, a city that is a sanctuary city where people are still being accosted at their immigration hearings. Is there evidence that Mamdani would return New York City to the 1970s hellhole Times Square? What is your evidence of that?
It's very simple. So he wants to raise taxes on people who make the most money. What eventually is going to happen is you're going to lose that tax base. Once you lose that tax base, our bonds will get degraded. Now the city budget will not be substantial enough to subsidize not only the cops, but the fire department, the sanitation department. Once you start losing Wall Street and people who pay $11,000, $12,000 a month to live on the Upper East Side, you're done.
Let me ask
you. And you go back to the 70s when Gerald Ford said to New York, drop dead.
Okay, but hold on, Arthur.
Crisis.
But Arthur, you raise the taxes on wealthy people in this city
maybe a couple percent, right?
They're already at 50%.
Yeah, they're already
53%.
and that's exactly my
Which is
point.
where they're
already paying some of the high. I know, Arthur, but Arthur, they are already paying right at this moment some of the highest taxes in the country, and you think that 1 or 2% is going to cause a mass exodus out of New York?
Anna just said it's correct. It already has started.
I just want to be clear that that's what you're saying, because I think that seems pretty extreme.
Because he's also not going to focus on crime. Right now, you have Police Commissioner Tisch and John Chell, the chief of the department. Crime in the city of New York right now is set to break all records as the lowest ever in recorded history for shootings and murders. Once that starts going up in the other direction, and the tax base is gone, and sanitation is gone, and schools are gone.
Why does crime go up?
I mean, what could go wrong, right? This guy only wants universal rent control and more public spending in the highest tax city in America. You know, NYC residents already cough up an extra 3.8% just for the privilege of living there, and now Wall Street's freaking out because they know what's coming if this goes sideways: flight of capital, falling real estate values, and a hollowed out tax base. We're talking less money for cops, fire, and sanitation, which, despite what liberals say, is a recipe for disaster. But this is what happens when ideologues like Reid cheerlead policies with zero concern for real-world outcomes. Here she is again, this time on The Breakfast Club, dropping the genius idea that giving Iran nuclear weapons might bring peace to the Middle East.
You know how they say the most polite society in the country is Texas? Because everybody's packing?
Everybody got guns. That's right.
You know, maybe the Middle East would be calmer if there weren't just, I mean, what I spoke yesterday to a Navy veteran who used to fly those bombers that they used to drop the bunker, but the 3,000-pound bombs. And he was telling me, he said, don't get it twisted. This war is not about a real threat that Iran posed to anyone. They don't have nukes, and they didn't have nukes, and they weren't making nukes. This is about a geopolitical push, the same way it was when we went after Mossadegh. To make it, we would rather an Iran with a dictator who's a puppet than a free Iran who could defy us and take the oil we feel entitled to. In this case, Israel wants to be the hegemon of the region. They want to be the United States, the big boy in the bloc, and have no competitors. And their biggest two potential competitors are Saudi Arabia and Iran. And so the idea here is to make them the unquestioned superpower in the region. That's what this is about. It is not about Iran imminently having nukes.
What is the reality of the Joy Reid show on MSNBC? Like, why did it come to an end? Because you heard so many different rumors. They were saying the ratings were low. Trump didn't want her there anymore.
Right. He probably didn't.
like what was it?
I had gotten nothing. Then I get a text message then early the next morning saying, "Can you talk at noon?" And I was fired immediately. There was no warning. So and I asked, well, what's the nothing? They were just like, oh, we just want to make some changes. They never said why. So I've had to live in the rumor mill with everybody else.
You know, you've got to love how she's acting like handing a flamethrower to an arsonist and calling it fire prevention is some kind of brilliant strategy. Iran's nuclear program isn't theoretical. It's already enriched uranium up to 60%, and they're actively targeting sites to shield progress. Reid's remarks aren't just wrong, they're dangerous. It's all part of the same hollow act with her and establishment media types. Defend terrorists, bash the US, and rewrite the past while pretending to care about groups that you're trying to brainwash into being dependent on you. But let me know what you think. Should people like Joy Reid be treated as serious commentators after pushing this kind of dangerous nonsense? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. That stuff really does help us out. Until then, this has been Nerk News. Thanks for watching. Bye.